Corrupt cop Raphael Styx is going through a rough patch in life. His wife has filed for divorce due to his bad habits. However, this doesn't stop him from continuing his shady dealings. In the evening, Styx meets with his accomplice, Gino, to receive another payment for his assistance. The cop's role in this scheme is simple. Through Gino, he warns a large gang about upcoming ambushes being set up against them. As the meeting concludes, the two part ways. But suddenly, Styx notices something strange. A man in a theatrical mask is killing someone wearing red sneakers nearby. Styx checks the victim's pulse, and after confirming that there's nothing he can do, he begins to chase the killer. The cop corners the criminal, but the villain proves quicker. He knocks Styx out, shoots him, and dumps his body in the water. A few hours later, Raphael crawls ashore, still unsure of what happened to him. The man examines his hands and notices a bullet hole in one of them, but he doesn't feel any pain. Finding a packet of money in his pocket, Styx remembers an important meeting and heads to a friend's house. At the woman's place, he asks for a few minutes to change clothes and dry off, but another surprise awaits him. He finds another hole under his shirt. Frightened, Raphael rushes to the hospital and asks to be seen without registration. An old acquaintance of the cop, Dr. Vranken, responds to his request. The doctor invites Styx into his office to examine him and provide assistance. Vranken checks the patient's heartbeat, but the device shows a complete stop. Then Vranken tries to take some samples near the wound, but Styx loses his temper and flees. The cop goes home to clean up while no one is around. But at the door, he is met by his dog, which for the first time reacts aggressively to its owner. Locking himself in the bathroom, Raphael examines the wound and removes the bullet. His experience tells him something strange is happening. With such a wound, he shouldn't be alive. Finally, Styx reaches for his phone and listens to messages. He has to pull himself together to go to work and pick up his kids from school. On the way, the cop informs his colleagues about a crime on the waterfront. He arrives at the scene, but officers Delacroix and Krebitz are surprised to report that they found no evidence. Styx's story astonishes his friends. The forgotten phone, the wound, it all seems like a lie to them. Almost as if sensing this, Raphael starts to get angry and something strange happens to him. Seizing the moment, Styx plants the bullet he removed from himself. The cops find the evidence and send it for analysis. Styx tries not to attract his family's attention, but this proves difficult. At dinner, the man attacks the food. He doesn't notice how he eats everything on the table, and within a few minutes, his body rejects the excess. His family interprets this behavior as the aftermath of a wild night and refuses to talk to the madman. Only his little daughter comes to comfort the old man. She hugs her dad tightly, and at that moment, something monstrous awakens in Styx. Realizing that he needs to do something about it, Raphael returns to Dr. Vranken and asks for help. The doctor admits that he won't be able to help until he thoroughly studies this anomaly, and he offers his guest to stay in his lab. Styx refuses to be a guinea pig in the doctor's lab and decides to solve his problem on his own. After visiting the doctor, Raphael heads to his friend Amanda's place, but there he encounters Gino. The guy has decided to deal with the traitor who didn't warn the gang about the police ambush. He attacks the cop and is shocked to discover that his weapon has no effect. Styx doesn't even feel the pain. On the contrary, Gino's aggression gives Raphael strength, and he tears off a piece of the guy's arm to satisfy his hunger. After the encounter with the psychopath, Gino goes to a bar, but there he is met by gang members who are unhappy with his behavior. For betraying them, Gino is killed, and his body is dumped in a landfill. Raphael's hand starts to itch, and he removes the bandage. To his surprise, he discovers that the wound has healed, and his palm looks healthy. The lonely old man turns off the TV and goes to bed. As soon as he falls asleep, the man in the theatrical mask appears in the room. He sets up a surveillance camera and quietly leaves. Sitting in his car, the stranger removes the mask, revealing Dr. Vranken underneath. Raphael's daughter recognizes the mask that she drew for identification. She takes the old man to a museum and shows him a painting with the exact same face depicted on it. Throughout the day, several people tell Styx that he smells unpleasant, but he doesn't care. His focus is on finding the one who turned him into a living dead. During a conversation with Commissioner Lena Krebitz, Raphael tries to find out how the investigation is progressing, but it becomes clear to him that he is among the suspects. Raphael takes a shower, but the unpleasant smell only gets stronger. Moreover, he notices an insect that has settled in his wound. The cop is frightened once again and heads to the doctor. Vranken sends the patient for an MRI and discovers that only his brain is functioning in his body. The rest of his organs have long ceased to live. The doctor advises Raphael to avoid warm rooms and hot showers. He gives the patient a balm used in morgues and recommends using strong perfume to mask the unpleasant odor. The doctor also reveals that the man doesn't have long. His brain will continue to function as long as it is nourished. Raphael has no idea what the caring doctor is hiding. When Vranken returns home and descends into his lab, he fills Styx's diary, calling him his latest subject. Besides Styx, there are other specimens in the lab, including the guy in the red sneakers. To preserve his body, Raphael makes an unusual decision. He sleeps in a freezer. Waiting until everyone leaves, Styx emerges from the freezer. Suddenly, someone tries to attack him, but the hungry zombie fends off the blow. His face changes, and the assailant turns into a delicious breakfast. Coming to his senses, Raphael looks around in horror. He quickly cleans the area and rushes to the shower to wash off the evidence of the crime. The remains of the visitor are wrapped in bags and thrown into the trunk, but Raphael doesn't manage to leave unnoticed. He is met by his partner, Delacroix. Styx tries to stay calm, steering the conversation toward work matters, but a persistent knock comes from the trunk, and Raphael fears his secret may be revealed. When the knocking catches Delacroix's attention, Styx decides to get away from his partner. He asks the guy to step out for a moment and quickly drives off. Raphael takes his hitchhiker to a deserted place and finds out that the man is still alive. The stranger reveals that he was hired by the man in the mask. Styx is needed as a specimen. The cop decides to set a trap. He sends a message posing as the assassin, but Dr. Vranken doesn't fall for it. He watches the accomplices through hidden cameras. Not knowing what to do next with his hungry immortal friend, Raphael takes him to the doctor and leaves him in the lab. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the city, someone also attacks a member of the gang. Raphael's morning begins as usual, in the freezer, but this time the man feels strange. He seems to be getting younger and looks much better. His children and nanny notice this as they meet the head of the family in the kitchen. For Dr. Vranken, Raphael's gift turns out to be a real stroke of luck. He carefully studies the material and takes notes. Periodically, the doctor leaves the remains of a leg to talk to its owner, who is locked in a cage. After one such conversation, the doctor has to take a shower, and at this time, his little daughter enters the lab. Vranken barely manages to save the girl from being bitten by the zombie at the last moment. From the commissioner, Raphael learns that the bullet's analysis is complete. His service weapon wasn't flagged, but the real owner is unknown. While attempts to find the culprit have brought no results, Styx returns to the doctor, hoping that at least a way to cure his ailment has been found. But Vranken admits that so far, it's a complete zero. He's studying the anomaly, but doesn't know how to get rid of it. The doctor's prisoner recognizes the cop who turned him into a zombie. He asks the man to save him, or at least bring him some food. In his spare time, Dr. Vranken and his wife work at a shelter for poor people. The caring doctor surrounds the unfortunate with attention, earning universal love and respect. Raphael notices that his hand is getting worse again. He applies the balm given by the doctor to hide the signs of decay and the unpleasant smell, but the changes are overtaking the cop. When he sees a mouse, instinct kicks in, and Raphael doesn't even realize how he eats the animal. The doctor is so concerned about his patients that he even visits one of them at home. Old Martha opens the door to the doctor without fear, unaware that within a minute he will sedate her. Martha comes to her senses only a few hours later. She doesn't understand why the doctor has tied her up, but instead of explaining, Vranken gags his guest. Meanwhile, Styx sets out to find his partner, Delacroix. He finds the guy next to a mutilated body, and soon the culprit is revealed. The new zombie turns out to be Gino. He suggests that Raphael join forces and start hunting people, but the cop refuses to follow his instincts, leading to a fight between the men. Unfortunately, Gino manages to escape. In the morgue, they examine the body that Raphael discovered. He tries to mislead the experts, but they immediately recognize human bite marks on the victim. While the experts are busy studying the strange body, Dr. Vranken continues his experiments, which seem to be showing success. The doctor pours a strange substance into a syringe and injects it into Martha. Unfortunately, the patient's heart can't take it, and the mad scientist immerses her body in a special solution for living still life. Unaware that his doctor is up to such things, Raphael visits him and takes the remains of his former friend. The cop fulfills the old man's last request. He takes him out to sea on a boat and lowers him into the water. Reflecting on the eternal, Styx examines his palm, which continues to blacken. The rest of his body continues to decay as well, despite the freezer. During a joint raid, Raphael loses control again and attacks Delacroix. The zombie manages to stop in time, but his partner notices something is wrong. Dr. Vranken gathers all the volunteers from the shelter and talks about some new achievements. No one understands what he's talking about. At the same time, some issues are noticed with a security guard in the central business center. The good doctor's wife invites a young man who has fallen on hard times and has no money to stay at their home. Vranken allows the guest to stay, but the man is surprised by the questions about health and lifestyle that the host asks him. Suddenly, the young man starts to feel unwell, and the doctor asks his wife to leave and take their daughter with her. The madman then takes the victim to his lab. In the Styx family, a new problem arises. His son has fallen in with a bad crowd and was arrested for theft. The cop tries to explain the rules to the teenager, but a fight breaks out between them, and Raphael loses control and attacks the boy. Raphael leaves home to avoid doing something terrible. He suffers from the nightmare his life has become. To spare his family, Raphael moves to an old boat. In the business center, it's discovered that the security guard shows no signs of life. All the news reports are talking about how the body was created by an unknown person. Raphael's wife tells his colleagues about the recent incident, and Lena goes in search of her friend to find out what happened to him. The cop puts on a hood and turns off the lights so that his friend can't see him. He asks why Lena was looking for him, and the commissioner shows the cop a recording from the business center cameras, which shows a masked man delivering the security guard's body. Raphael's wife finds the bill for the MRI that Styx had. She asks her husband to meet, and Styx has to cover his face with foundation to hide the spots. Before the meeting, Styx stops by the morgue and examines the security guard's body. But after he leaves, the orderly discovers an interesting detail. One of the patients in the refrigerator has been gnawed on. Styx waits for Isabel in a cafe, and when she arrives, he assures her that there is nothing to worry about. It was just a routine checkup and he's fine. But his wife suspects that this is a lie. Raphael is acting strangely, looks very bad, and at the end of dinner, he starts to feel nauseous. Without further ado, Isabel turns to the family doctor, Vranken, but the specialist also assures her that everything is under control. Styx is just nervous about the divorce and is showing signs of stress. Dr. Vranken's wife secretly goes down to the lab and finds the prisoner there, but she lacks the courage to untie him, and the woman flees. The doctor suspects that someone entered the basement in his absence, but the hostage assures him that no one was there. After examining the patient, Vranken can't understand why the virus isn't working on him. Finally, the scientist finds the answer and, armed with a rope, he stops the guy's heart. A postman notices that Martha isn't responding to the doorbell. A few hours later, the commissioner is informed about a second strange body that was being prepared for long-term storage. Raphael's daughter arrives at the boat to visit the old man, but he has another episode and drives the girl away. Franny doesn't make it home. She's kidnapped by Gino and his accomplice. Upon discovering her daughter's disappearance, Isabel arrives at the boat. But something goes wrong. The blonde wakes up to find herself chained to a pipe. Raphael also chains himself so as not to harm his wife. He tells her the whole truth about his situation, and when she doesn't believe his story about zombies, he offers her his hand so she can feel the absence of a pulse. Footsteps are heard above, and Isabel starts calling for help, but the visitors turn out to be worse than the zombie husband. On the upper deck, Raphael finds Gino. He shows the old man a photo of Franny and sets a condition. The container bringing the slaves must enter the city without interference, or the girl will pay for his mistakes. A psychiatrist addresses the public, assessing the high-profile crimes. He states that the person responsible is mentally ill, and there's no telling what they'll do next. The specialist's words deeply offend Vranken. He even goes to the cemetery to complain to his mother. The mad doctor tells the tombstone that soon his still lifes will come to life and shock everyone even more. Raphael has to tell Isabel that their daughter has been kidnapped. He also admits that he collaborated with the criminals and now they want his help. Realizing they have no other choice, Isabel asks her husband to free her and use her as prey to regain his strength, but the zombie loves his wife too much. He cuts his chain, kisses the woman, and leaves to rescue Franny. Raphael visits his friend, but she insists that she doesn't know where Gino is or where the girl might be. But the cop's friend is lying. When Styx leaves, she goes upstairs to Franny's room. One of Gino's men follows Styx, but ends up becoming his prey. Raphael restores his strength, but his colleagues catch him at the crime scene. Styx manages to come up with a reason for being there. Just as the doctor is about to get rid of his wife, she confesses that she was in the lab. The woman believes it's all for the sake of science and is willing to help her husband with his experiments. Styx returns to the boat. He releases his wife and asks her to go home and wait for news. Dr. Vranken descends into the lab with his wife and shows her his work. The woman notices the body of the recent guest whom her husband failed to resurrect. Despite her horror, she agrees to help her husband, and they lower the guy into the solution together. The orderly recognizes Styx and offers him help. He's willing to keep watch so no one enters while the cop has lunch and regains his strength. But Raphael is distracted by a phone call. Gino reminds him of the deal. Styx activates Gino's accomplice's phone and plants it in a random car. It seems everything is going according to plan. During the operation, the commissioner orders Delacroix to trace the signal and leave the smuggler's ship for later. But despite the boss's orders, Delacroix heads to the ship to stop the gang. Styx has to knock out his partner to avoid risking his daughter's life. The commissioner sees the mobile phone in a poor woman's car and realizes they've been deceived to distract them from the transport of living cargo. Raphael waits for the human trafficking to finish and for Gino to return Franny to him. Meanwhile, Delacroix regains consciousness and heads off to find the smugglers. He notices the gang leader dining on one of the trafficked boys, and the cop opens fire, but the bullets have no effect on Gino. Styx confronts Gino face to face and demands his daughter back. It becomes clear that the gangster never intended to keep his word, and the zombies prepare to fight. Years ago, during an arrest, Styx broke the rules again and didn't call for backup. It ended in tragedy. He accidentally injured Amanda's daughter, Rose. Now Franny's life is in Amanda's hands, and it's up to her whether the girl lives or not. Gino returns to Styx's boat to finish off his rival, but the owner is ready for the encounter and does everything to find out where his daughter is. Lena confesses to Delacroix that she made a mistake and now wants to arrest Styx. A few hours later, a police squad arrives at the boat, but all they find are Gino's helmet and some black stains. Unaware of what's happening to his patient, Dr. Vranken continues his experiment with the guy, planning to turn him into another still life. He's interrupted by a call from Raphael, who informs him of a new specimen, but the zombie doesn't make it to the doctor's house. His vision starts to fail, and he gets into an accident. When Raphael gets out of the car, he finds the trunk where Gino was lying, empty. Delacroix arrives at Dr. Vranken's house and asks questions about Styx, but the doctor manages to dodge the conversation, which Raphael watches closely from the next room. The zombie isn't too concerned about his colleague's visit. He's hoping the doctor has found a cure and will soon restore him to normal. But instead, Vranken lectures his patient about his dream to save the world. A brilliant idea occurs to the doctor. He asks Styx to bite him so he can test the infection on himself. But Raphael refuses to pass on the terrible virus and, holding back, flees the lab. Raphael heads to the hospital where his old father is staying. The blind old man is happy to hear his son's voice and asks him to finally let him resort to euthanasia, but Styx seems to have another plan. The zombie takes his father out of the hospital, despite the nurse's protests. By the time Isabel arrives at the hospital, the men are gone. They go to the shore and Styx draws strength from his father, who willingly agrees to become prey. But the old man doesn't pass away. Instead, after the bite, he opens his eyes and sees sunlight for the first time. The old man enjoys the sunset, but he realizes he can no longer help his son. He takes Raphael's hand and brings the gun to his own temple. A shot rings out. The mad doctor's new specimen is ready, and his wife helps Vranken package it. Raphael's vision, however, continues to deteriorate. Despite the ban, he turns on his phone to see a photo of his daughter. At that moment, the cop recalls the day he accidentally shot Rose. The cops arrive at the spot from which Raphael's phone signal was last detected, but the zombie escapes again, leaving his former colleagues wandering along the shore. Meanwhile, Styx arrives at Amanda's house and finds his daughter. 15 minutes later, Gino arrives at the same place. He tries to move quietly and examines the apartment, but only Dr. Vranken awaits him in the room. Raphael disarms his opponent, and the doctor handcuffs him, but Vranken prevents his patient from destroying the enemy, insisting that they need him to find a cure. Amanda takes Franny home. Styx doesn't dare enter the house to be with his daughter and wife. He plans to leave, but Delacroix appears behind him. A few weeks earlier, radio broadcasts report that several cases of bird flu have been registered in a small province. One of the birds bit its owner, and a few days later, the owner became a victim of the mad doctor. As usual, Vranken placed her in a tank with the solution, and a few drops ended up on the floor. A bullet later fell there, which eventually ended up in Raphael Styx's heart. This simple chain of events led to what happened to the cop. Styx enters the doctor's house with his hands tied, accompanied by Delacroix. But soon the roles reverse and the cop wakes up in Vranken's lab. Gino notices the new guest and suggests to Delacroix that they team up to escape, but Styx enters the room. He pulls out his former partner's phone and records a confession of all his corrupt deeds. In return, Raphael asks for a favor, to give him some time to find the man in the mask. Delacroix agrees and the men leave the scientist's house, but Styx learns of a fire at the farm, which his son was involved in, and it becomes clear that the search for the man in the mask will have to be postponed. Vranken studies Gino's tests and provokes his pet to bite him, but the gangster suspects something is off. He refuses to eat so as not to share his gift. Isabel allows Styx to see the children, but when they are alone, the woman asks her husband not to give up hope and to believe in a cure. While Vranken visits an old acquaintance, his wife goes down to the basement to free Gino, but her kindness turns tragic. Once free, the girl becomes the zombie's prey. Styx reconciles with Isabel, and during the process, the zombie in him awakens. The woman tries to calm her husband, but it doesn't work. In his most intense moments, he can't control himself. Dr. Vranken finds his wife's body. He fails to punish the culprit, and Gino escapes. Styx enters the room just as the doctor is washing his wife's body, but instead of offering condolences, Vranken asks his friend to let him take samples again. The cops manage to track down Gino's hideout, but it turns out to be empty. The only thing Delacroix finds is a bullet that Dr. Vranken fired into the criminal. This time, Gino kidnaps Amanda's daughter, and Styx agrees to help his friend. Gino lures the pair into his lair, but it's already too late. Rose is hungrily finishing off the leftovers of the feast. The psychopath locks all three in a cage, planning to have some fun, but a police squad breaks into the lair. Gino tries to escape, and he almost succeeds, but at the last moment, Delacroix shoots him in the head. Raphael asks his colleagues to take them to Dr. Vranken to save Rose. After examining the girl, the doctor says he has a new remedy, but he doesn't know how it will work. While everyone waits for the doctor's help, Lena receives the results of the ballistic examination. Raphael finally realizes that Vranken has been lying to him all along. The zombie doesn't have time to protect his colleague. The doctor puts on the mask again and opens fire, but Styx fires back and the villain falls to the ground. Raphael visits his family, and Isabel hopes they will be together again, but Styx asks her to understand. It's impossible, and he can't live among people. The man arrives at the shore with Delacroix and asks his friend to help him if he can't pull the trigger himself. But at the last second, the dark entity within him prevails. A corrupt cop, a loser, and an alcoholic. His wife is about to divorce him. His father, a blind old man, wants euthanasia. The doctor is a madman who dreamed of reviving people but could never succeed. One day, the doctor brought in an old woman for experiments who had been pecked by an ostrich infected with bird flu. The liquid from this infected old woman fell onto a bullet that later hit the cop and turned him into a zombie. He rotted, stank, and craved human flesh. He turned to the doctor for help, not knowing that the doctor was the criminal behind the mask. Throughout the film, he hoped that the doctor would make a cure and save him. While waiting, he even ate the legs of his old father. But in the end, everyone learned that the doctor was a villain and there would be no cure. Styx went to the field to shoot himself, but at the last second, the zombie within him took over. And this is where the movie ends.